Okay, bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're finally recording. I mean, yeah, it's been a couple of weeks, I think. So,
Yeah,
yeah, man, I'm actually not in a good mood, you know? I'm not in a
really.
good mood. Yeah, you wouldn't know, but I'm not in a good mood. I just,
Let's talk about it.
one of those days where you just like do nothing and you feel like, what a waste of a life. I woke up late because I've been having sleeping problems. Went to Jum'ah, came back from Jum'ah, started assembling a cot. Okay, I got this cot for my first son a while ago, maybe I guess a year ago or more than that, and it's a really big cot, right? So it's not like a baby cot. It's like up to, they said, I think up to like 6 years or something it could be used. So
Mm.
it's really big and it's like solid wood. It's heavy. But what I realized is that I think the only furniture I've ever assembled is like IKEA furniture. And not all furniture is actually made like that. Like a lot of furniture is not made to be put together or taken apart by someone with basic tools, right? And
Mm.
this was just infuriating. Um, yeah, and I didn't finish. I mean, I must have spent, let me think. Yeah, I spent about 3 hours on it. Spent three
Okay.
hours on it. My wife even had to help because it was like a 2-3 man job, even though it's just a cot, because you got to hold it up while you're doing X, Y, Z. So
Yeah.
didn't even finish it in 3 hours. Now I went to pray Asr. Now I'm recording this. Then it's gonna be like Maghrib, and then before you know it, it'll be bedtime.
One of those days.
Yeah, annoying.
We just needed a nap.
Well, I needed a nap
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I felt exactly, well, not maybe not exactly the same, but I just woke up really awful. Like, I don't know what was wrong with me. Felt really, really
in the
like
morning.
off most of the day, just as I woke
Mm.
up, since I woke up. And then, yeah, I just put some Quran on and went to bed, like had a nap.
Mm.
And I left the Quran running in the background. And now I've woken up and I actually feel okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that tends to happen. Tends to be like it could be a lack of sleep. It could be sometimes you can't put your finger on it, but then
Yeah.
everything you think it could be is what it always is. Meaning you because trying to find a reason. What's gone bad or what is it that's going wrong that's making me feel negative?
Yeah.
Then you start thinking about all the negative things in your life, and then you're like, "Oh, my life's so negative."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's not why it's happened. But you're searching for a reason, and you're coming up with loads of reasons.
Mm.
Um, but no, yeah, alhamdulillah. In the moment, playing the Quran helps. But then, like for me, it's always been like having a nap whilst Quran's playing, and then waking up. I feel a lot better.
You got a
You know,
specific treatment for this, yeah?
it's a tried and tested treatment. I've tried it a lot.
Okay.
It tends to be a lack of sleep has mashed me up somehow, um, maybe, but not always. And yeah, I just put some Quran on, put on a reciter that I like, and let it go. Uh, I used to do it a lot when I was working before. Used to be like, yeah, I used to get a lot of anxiety for work and stuff, and I would put it on to go to sleep, put it on all the time. I feel a lot more better when I wake up. Might not immediately work, like it doesn't immediately like, it's not like a quick fix, like, oh, let's play some Quran, I'm fine now, let me go. I have to literally fall asleep to it. And it's
Mm.
a combination maybe of that rejuvenation of sleep and obviously the
Mm.
Quran itself.
Yeah.
Um,
I was,
try it.
yeah. Although the day's over now, I'll probably be all right tomorrow. I'm not, I
Inshallah.
don't know how you said you just felt off or whatever. I don't feel down. I feel frustrated.
Really?
That's how I feel.
Okay.
So inshallah, if I have a decent day tomorrow, then normal. It's all right, alhamdulillah. But it's just, yeah, frustration is a strong.
There's a that that leads me into something actually I wanted to ask you. There's a bit of a debate going on the Twitter sphere at the moment, which
Okay.
I haven't engaged in. I haven't given my 2 cents on, but it might be worth asking. Um, the whole thing was about like opening up to your wife. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of single brothers are talking about it. And although I don't see the women's side as often because my algorithm doesn't show me, I think it's between. I think it's a sister's written, "Oh, men should open up more," and the men are saying no, they shouldn't, and that kind of thing. Is how you're feeling now would be something that you'd open up to your wife about? And what
No,
extent do you open up to your wife? No, you don't. You open up to
not for
me and
no. I'm
my
saying
life,
not
but not
not
to your
for
wife.
this. This is like nothing. This is nothing. I'm
Really?
just.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did I tell you initially? I said. What did I say? I was angry, or I can't remember.
You said you were frustrated.
Yeah, that's not a big deal. That's what I'm saying. It's not a big deal.
No
It'll
big
be
deal, no.
gone. It'll probably be gone in 5 minutes, right?
What about
So
something a bit
definitely not that.
more? What about something a bit more than that?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I can't say it's happened in my marriage so far that I've ever felt the need. Yeah.
You're quite a
I,
constant individual, though, aren't you?
say that again.
You're not too erratic. I said you're quite
No, I'm
constant
not.
in your mentality.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not. Exactly. I'm not someone who feels strongly, so that would be a factor. But
Mm,
I think overall, yeah, men should refrain from just being too open with that, to just let it all flow, right? The default, obviously, for men and women is to turn to Allah, to do some adhkar, to send salah on the Prophet, sallam, these kind of things. That should be
mm,
the first thing, and that would help. Um, make dua to Allah if it's something that's going on like longer, yani. Make dua to help you to ease it for you and stuff. Um, I think though, if beyond that you feel the need to, you want to share it, you want to, maybe you're looking for a solution, or maybe you're just, looking to express. Um,
yeah.
I don't think generally your wife would be the first person to go to for that. It'd be better to go to a man,
Okay.
I think. That's what I would recommend. But this is the
Is that what
problem we
you've done in
have.
the past then? Gone.
No, because bro, the last time I can remember where I was like feeling a certain way, like feeling very strong. I don't know. I guess what was I feeling? I was feeling maybe probably it was feeling down. I don't want to use the word depression, but I was feeling down. It was probably 2014. I was
Mm,
living alone. I just kept it all to myself. To me, I was just dealt with it myself. Um, I don't really
yeah.
regret that. I think I'm all right. I think I'm all right with that. Especially with a lot of the personal development stuff I've read over the years. I'm very like self-reflective and try to be self-aware, and so I try to catch myself like, oh, you feel like that because you're thinking like that, and that's your thought pattern. And so I just like
Mm,
deconstruct it a bit, and I do these recommended things generally, but it doesn't happen often for me. But but yeah, that's what I was going to say though. I would recommend that if you need to go to someone beyond like Allah, then go to a man. But the problem is that it's not something that is done. It's not normal, is it? To go to someone and say, "Look, I'm feeling like this," or even other things that are not related to feelings, like, "Oh, financially things are not good," or whatever it is. Like we don't share
yeah.
these things. We don't have these very close relationships, and I think that's a problem. So I wouldn't. I do think men need to open up more than they currently do, perhaps, at least in the Western culture, but not to their wives, to their friends, to their uncles, to their mentors, to their, these people. But those relationships don't exist and they need to exist. That's what I would say. What would you say?
Interesting. Interesting. I'm gonna. I'm just gonna try and look at where are we? Some things that people have thrown out, not thrown up. uh, just to base it on, just to see what the ideas are. I think there's obviously two extremes with this. I think there's the side where you open up about everything and anything you're feeling.
Yeah.
That's what women say, or some women say they want from their
Yeah.
husbands. Uh, or even like conceptually, that's what they want. They theorize that that's what they want, but do they actually want that? I don't know.
Hmm.
And then there's the other side, which hyper masculine will say never ever nothing, kind of silent protagonist of your story, and you're the leader, and you,
Sigma
you
male.
don't say anything to anybody. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and I don't know if I could do either really, either of those
Yeah.
two extremes. Um, I've definitely opened up maybe more than I should have sometimes, and I've regretted it in certain aspects over some things. But some things, if I didn't open up, I don't think I'd be able to function. If I didn't just speak about something that was affecting me, that was only something that would only really affect me in a certain capacity. There's like, for example, there's categories, isn't there? There's like, okay, financial difficulty. You might not want to open up to your spouse. I think we spoke about this before. You might not want to open it to your spouse, or your family, or anyone.
Yeah.
Um, because especially if they're reliant on you. But also, I don't like talking about financial stuff to friends, to other men. I don't at all, unless like I'm forced to because of a situation. For example, you're invited to something, but you literally cannot go. You know, um, and you have to kind of think of an excuse that isn't gonna demean you or whatever. I might not. I literally just don't have the money to go. But do I really want to say that? I don't know. What can I say to save face? Um, but then other things like when my dad died, um, I didn't talk too much. I didn't really share much about my sisters. I don't think I talked to my mum a lot about it because I realised, they're still really hurting from the whole ordeal. You know, um, and maybe it wasn't until like 6 weeks later or whatever I started talking to my wife about it, about how I felt about it.
But did
Um,
you did were you actually feeling the need to do it and you held back, or you weren't really feeling the need?
yeah, I think sometimes your wife knows you more than most people do.
Yeah.
My wife definitely knows me more than most people, and I needed advice because there were certain aspects in my personality that were changing based on what had happened that I couldn't figure out on my own. You know, and sometimes you need someone else to tell you something that only is in the security of that relationship can you share. Like there's certain things that maybe I struggle with that I wouldn't tell you. I mean, I wouldn't tell any other man, but like my wife would know that I struggle with it because she lives with me, right? It could be like I remember maybe 6 weeks after Dad died. There's no doubt I was fine, alhamdulillah, and I was pushing through and everything. But then, like 6 weeks later, I developed like this anger problem. Well, I don't know where it came from, and I was just really angry with everyone and everything. And I think it was I was angry a lot with myself for not having done a lot of things sooner, right? Not prepared myself sooner for things like this, but also angry at anything I saw that I deemed pathetic in my worldview, because I'd gone through something like that, and I was like, oh, look at these people complaining about nonsense, right? And how dare I complain about nonsense before? Now everyone's complaining, and I just had zero patience for people. But you
Right.
need, you need counsel from your wife, and you need counsel from someone who cares about you to just realign you onto what your goals are. Also,
Yeah.
ambitions, like sharing ambitions with your wife, I think is positive as long as you can. It's not all talk, and you're going to follow through.
But
But
that's the
there's a
risk.
there's that level,
That's the risk of it.
but that's part of it, isn't it? That's why you've got an accountability sort of mentality. You've got, or maybe you do it with brothers, and you've got a bit of something like that with the front row. But there's a line of things that you wouldn't want shared outside of your home, of things that you're trying to achieve. You know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, I don't think it's strictly like you should never share anything with your wife. Or the thing is, bro, there are two categories in my head here. There is
Yeah,
venting your feelings and dealing with certain emotions you're feeling, and then there's stuff like you're talking about, like ambitions and stuff. Okay, if we're purely talking about the emotions, venting, expressing, that then my general rule is that's not to go to your wife with. But there will be things that, like you said, like there will be things that it just makes sense. It's just right to go to your wife about that thing, right? And
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
so there would be definitely exceptions. I wouldn't deny that at all. When it comes to ambitions and stuff, I don't know how to exactly express this, but I know I see myself as someone who shares too much with my wife. Like I think I'd be better off, she'd be better off if I didn't share as much. I'm not talking about feelings. I'm talking about just little details of my work or something. Like I don't think that helps. I don't think it's awful, but I think if I could keep that under control more, that would be better off. I mean, it's not a big a deal, but I do think these things, you know what I mean? So if we're talking about those, like work stuff, business stuff, um,
Yeah.
that should probably just be kept to yourself. Maybe if you need to share it with friends or something. Um,
Mm.
Even like, one thing I've realized recently, it sounds dumb to say this, but being wealthy is lonely, right? Or being successful, you could say as well, in different things, it's lonely. And so
It's lonely at the
people,
top.
yeah, yeah, it is, bro. And it's like some things that certain people of certain wealth or certain levels of success, some things they would say, the average, if they say it on YouTube or Twitter, people will slate them. People, because people don't understand, right? People don't
Mm.
understand. Obviously, when your life changes, your mindset changes, and the people that have not gone through that change, they wouldn't understand. But the way
Yeah.
certain people, wealthy people, might talk on YouTube, it sounds very snobby or it sounds very egotistical or whatever. But I actually don't
Yeah.
think it always is. But it's just that most people can't relate. So then what do? You stay silent because like, well, I'm not sharing it because people are going to think that of me. But
Right.
that's where you need to find people who are also like you kind of thing, where you can talk. So that's one thing I kind of thought about recently, and I thought, yeah, it is lonely at the top, and it's actually a bigger problem than you might realize. Like, you just, for example, yeah, a lot of the people I know, a lot of people in Turkey, like let's say people who did hijrah here, I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like because the cost of living is quite low, their ambitions money wise are very tampered. Okay. So
Right.
if they're earning, let's say they save 20% of what they make, maybe 20-30% of what they make, they're comfortable. So they don't really aim to earn more.
Mm.
But what that means is that they're not that well off. And so sometimes for example, in the winter, I wanted to go skiing. I wanted to go skiing. I
Right.
haven't been skiing ever, except in that fake one in Dubai, right? So I thought, yeah, let me try it out. And I live in Turkey. Turkey has everything, has the beach, has the mountain, has this and that. So I want to go skiing, but there's no one to go skiing with because everyone, what do they say? Oh, I can't afford that. Or I don't have the free time for that because I have a job. So that's just like a little example of, like, I'm not even at the top. I'm just saying I just have a bit of extra money and I have quite a bit of freedom because of my business. And I can't find no one to go skiing with, or I can't find anyone to discuss those kind of, things with. So I can imagine what it's like when it's magnified times 10 and times 100 as well.
You're just an anomaly, bro. I try to figure out all these episodes, but I just can't do
What do you mean?
it. Let me think. Let me think. Okay, let's think. Let me read out this one because this is like the maybe the more extreme kind of not extreme, but like the rhetoric of this brother is always a bit on the I don't know, advanced side. But there's a bit of a thread here. So he says, "Man is a captain of his ship, the CEO. If your boss started crying at work, saying, 'I don't know what to do, I'm so stressed,' would you still respect him to the same level? Would you
Hmm.
take orders from this man? I wouldn't. If you're so lost, why should I listen to you?" And he says, "I wouldn't disrespect him or mock him. I would subconsciously no longer see him as my leader. I'd be leading him instead of him leading me. This temporary dynamic would change the dynamic of our relationship permanently. You are supposed to revere your leader. You are supposed to trust him with your life. I would not trust this soppy guy with my life, as he's clearly not equipped to handle it. Every single thing mentioned here applies to the man of the house." What are
Bro,
your
I
thoughts on that?
agree with that 100% of what was in that. Apart from
Yeah,
the one word where he said permanently change the dynamic, I don't know if it would or would not change it permanently, but I agree with 100%
yeah.
of the rest. 100%. Specifically because what was the
Mm.
first tweet? It was the first or second. What did he say? If you do what?
If your boss started crying at work, is that it?
Yeah, started
First
crying
one.
and saying what?
Your
Saying, I
boss.
don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do. I'm so stressed.
I'm so stressed. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
specifically to that point. Yeah, that stuff is not to be shared with your wife, and that is
yeah,
this is now we're mixing things, right? One is about being a man, but one is about being a leader, And yeah, leaders should
Yeah.
not do that. And we're leaders by default. We're leaders by
Yep. Yep.
default.
Yep.
I go to my employees and I say, "What do you think?" I go to my wife. I say, "What do you think?" But I don't tell them I don't know what to do. But I ask them maybe for their
Yeah.
input. Yeah, but
Yeah. There's a there's some more nuanced. So there's another brother here. He said, "I understand why women want their husbands opening up to them because they feel part of his life. They feel what they want to feel like part of his life, and it's their nature to be supportive and caring. I also used to think men should never open up, but I think the truth is more in the middle. By opening up, I don't mean crying like a woman, but sharing your hardships with her so she can give you that moral support that's going to push you through. As much as men like to play tough, we definitely need it, and there's nothing wrong in admitting it. But as a general rule, men shouldn't complain as much. Shouldn't complain much, anyways, whether to wife, friends, etc. It's not manly and will definitely decrease your worth in people's eyes. It shows a lack of sabr and it's religiously reprehensible when overdone. Start complaining to Allah for only He can help.
yeah, that's the default I said at the beginning, right? إنما أشكو
Yep,
بثي وحزني إلى الله.
yep,
I
yep, yep.
only complain to
Absolutely.
Allah. That's what Yaqub said, right? So
Yeah,
that's the default for men and women. Now we might say that men have an advantage here because the thing that's hard to hold back is the emotion. The stronger the emotion, the harder it is to hold it back. And so if we assume that women feel emotions stronger than men, more intensely, then we would say it makes sense that they would not be able to hold on as much. And then convert, also with men, we expect a bit more discipline on that side, right? That's the first thing. The second thing, I lost track of the whole tweet thread now.
let me put up one more. So this is from
No, no. Can you just
where is it?
repeat skim over some of the thing you just said? Because I was.
I've lost that one now.
Oh,
I've
okay,
lost it.
okay, okay.
I can't remember but essentially it was the middle path, wasn't it? It was like don't cry like a woman, but he's also
Ah,
saying that if you're there are certain
yes. This is what I
struggles.
was gonna say. The Prophet ﷺ, when he received revelation the first time, he went to his wife. He went to his wife, and I wrote this about this in my book. There's a chapter about this whole thing in my book, by the way.
Yeah,
He went to his wife, and he did not go to his wife and say, "I don't know what to do. I don't know this. I don't know that." I wasn't like he wasn't fully out of control. He went to her and he told her what to do. He still was in control enough to say, "Cover me." You see?
yeah,
So I think that is like if I'm going through some hardship in work, business, whatever, right? And I'm gonna need to work extra hours to cover up something, then yeah, I might go to my wife and say, "Look, I might keep it vague, or I might even say, okay, this has come up. Because of that, I need your support in this, this, this." Right?
mm,
Something kind of controlled, something very specific, not just emptying emotion onto someone. You know, that's what I think
yeah,
the middle path is.
yeah. I mean, let me just shut this door. Bear with me. Um, yeah, I mean, like Khadija radiallahu anha, she was reminding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah would never disgrace you. Essentially saying that you're a good man. Allah will never disgrace you. Whatever's happening
Yes,
is going to be khair for you, and that's the kind of reassurance and encouragement that I'm talking about.
yes, yeah,
That's definitely the kind of encouragement I've received from my wife
yeah,
when there has been, trials, etc.
yeah.
But also, yeah, like at the same time, there's levels to it, isn't there? There's levels. Although
Exactly, like
I'd be
that, like
interested to
receiving
see.
revelation and all of that. That's a very big deal. And so,
Yeah, absolutely.
your wife isn't going to lose confidence in your leadership if something huge happens and you're a bit shaken. That's normal.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's the magnitude of the thing you're coming to her with, but it's also whether that specific thing she relies on you for it. I think these two things kind of determine it.
I'd be interested to know, like, because the reason a lot of this discussion is happening is because women, at least the women on Twitter, are encouraging. That's that narrative that quite, I don't know, maybe it comes from the West or whatever. That narrative of, men need to open up more, mental health of men, and all this sort of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
another brother actually mentioned. Actually, before I say that, but yeah, they don't. The brothers are arguing that women don't know what they want. They think that's what they want, but actually, in reality, they might not want that.
Yeah,
When it actually starts playing out the way they say it, subconsciously, that will avert their, love and
yeah,
respect and whatever
yeah.
for their husband.
That's a common like.
So I could,
That's a common dig that men have at women is like, oh, you don't know what you want, right? It's a cliche thing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah,
also
absolutely.
normal that a lot of the time, a lot of the time we just feel things and we don't know exactly what we want. We just have a vague idea. So I think that's normal. That's fine. It's not something to like make fun of them about. Um,
Yeah, 100%.
but
But
ultimately, us
it
opening
extended
up
on.
is our decision. And so we are responsible for our decisions and the consequences of them. So, you know, it might be that our wives or we're just seeing sisters, random sisters are saying they would like this. Now it's for us to decide, okay, they say they would like this. What action will I take? And we're responsible for the action that we take.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. It's generally anything that you share, you have to analyze that relationship that you have with someone. Like I was speaking to a brother recently who was seeking advice from me, and he was essentially speaking about his the dynamic between his mother and his wife, right? And he was struggling with something that his wife was doing, let's say, and he kind of made a comment about it to his mother in confidence. And I was like, yeah, that was a big mistake. He goes, was I wrong in doing that? I said, yeah, absolutely. You biggest mistake of your life. And what ended up happening was that his mum took that, went a million miles an hour with it. And even though he had moved on and forgot about that and moved on from it, his mum never let go of that. And
Mm,
his mum would use that against his wife all the time and use that against, not against him, but whenever he had an issue, she would bring it up. Oh, but your wife does this to you. Your wife does. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
yeah.
And that's another thing. Like you could have marital problems. You need to assess who you're talking to and how it affects them. Because yes, the the reason maybe you wouldn't speak to your mother about stuff like that is because your mum loves you. Your mum loves you and she'll care about you and she'll always want to protect you, as her son.
Yeah. Your mum is your
So of
mum, man.
course, your mum's your mum. So no doubt, even subconsciously, there's an external woman out here who's kind of replacing a lot of the. I don't want to say caregiving, but you know what I'm trying to say. The
Yeah.
Who's fulfilling certain roles that maybe your mother used to fulfill for you, in terms of looking after the house, looking after you, etc., etc. So yeah, there's going to be a challenge there if you start, naming and shaming or complaining about. I mean, definitely, I hate complaining about anybody to anyone. I hate complaining. Number one, there's the risk of backbiting, no doubt. But even on a practical level, when you're trying to work something out, if you're going to talk about, if you're going to talk about someone in terms of seeking advice, it should be someone so far removed from the situation they don't even know who you're talking about, and then you can accurately relay the situation. Um, but yeah, there's that risk as well. Like I said, there's that risk as well. There's also, go on, yeah. Have you got any thoughts on that though? I mean, I'm sure you probably agree.
I was gonna say, why we're saying like sisters want their husbands to open up, right? There are two
Yeah,
potential reasons for this. One is because they really deeply care about the mental health of their fellow brothers in Islam. Okay. The other
yeah,
option is that women feel women get closer to other women by sharing and expressing and
yeah,
venting. Okay. So in their model of relationships, if I want to get closer to my husband, I will share my emotions with him and he will share with me, and that's how we become close. But that
yeah,
is
yeah,
the female dynamic. So maybe these women just need to understand and accept that that way of getting closer doesn't apply to men, it applies to women. So if you want to get close to your female friends or your sister or whatever, then apply that model. But for men, it doesn't necessarily work like that. And then if
yeah,
it's about men's mental health, I don't know if it is. You tell me what you think. I don't know if they're that concerned about that generally, but if it's about that, then I think what I said initially is true, is that Muslim men need to create a more of a culture of being open with other men.
maybe. I think, my 2 cents on it. I've dealt with a lot of people that are men anyway that have had serious depression and mental health issues, suicidal, etc. Um, my theory has always been that it stems from a a ripping away of his responsibility and purpose. You know, I think men have this innate nature to rise up to an occasion, rise up to a responsibility. But when that responsibility has been snatched away, whether it's your kids, whether it's your family or marriage, so or whether even something that you've done for yourself, like gambling addictions, for example, it just rips away any responsibility you had over your own finances. There was a time when the state would step in. Even Shari'an, the state would step in from a gambler who couldn't manage his finances because as a man, he's responsible for a family. It's almost like he's a mini state, so the state would have to step in to take control of that. Um,
What
but
country is
that lack
that?
of control, that's what it is. I can't remember. I read it in a history book. I can't remember the top of my head, but I remember it was like some sort of, it was like a fatwa ruling from a judge in some sort of Islamic history where it was like a man who's not capable of spending his finances on his family accordingly for whatever reason, and gambling could be one of them. The state would have to step in and commandeer his money and his wealth so that he can spend on his family on his behalf because he can't do it. Um, because why should the family suffer for the irresponsibility of the man or the addiction of the man or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Um, so something along those lines. But here, this is an interesting one. So I found one of the original threads, but um, uh, so there's a sister here. I don't know what type of women you're all marrying if you're too scared to open up to her because it will make you less masculine or whatever. But okay, you do you. And then a brother has basically added some context to this, which is quite nice. So he said, men are going to misunderstand that statement. The average woman simply doesn't know how to handle when a man has an emotional breakdown. They don't understand the solutions men need. There's a reason almost every man agrees this is not opening up because experience proves it's detrimental. The average trained professional therapist doesn't know how to deal with men, let alone the average woman. And there's a video clip that he shared here, which what I'll do, I don't want to play it because it's just going to take long. I'll try and read the subtitles as it's going, as he's saying it. So it's like a podcast episode between a therapist and a podcaster. So he's saying men need solutions. Most men avoid therapy because uh, the approaches are not designed to help the male brain to deal with pain or find solutions. That makes men believe therapy is worthless. Male depression is usually based on feeling helplessness and powerlessness and unable to affect one's life or environment. Therapy models focusing on helping men feel heard and loved instead of restoring their sense of personal power. Men need solutions, not just feelings. And then the therapist replies, absolutely. And we are churning out here in the United States an overwhelming number of therapists who do not have the skills that they need or the experience that they need to provide lasting solutions that will undiagnose you in the long term. When you get a man into that system, men would rather kill themselves than sit there and say, I am disabled. I must have a medical assistance for the rest of my life. And all I can do is sit there and talk about my feelings endlessly for the next 10 years while paying $10,000 for the privilege. And they're looking for solutions and they're looking for guidance on how to apply those solutions when you give them those things. And men will do just about anything for you. Oh, yeah, there you go. That's it. That's the clip. So, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's basically solution focused thing in terms of instead of expressing. Because, yeah, you could do that. I could talk to you at length about how I feel. And then at the end of it, I haven't achieved anything. I'm just in the same. What you end up feeling is that you were in the same situation you were before, and it's not that you've offloaded, you've actually just opened yourself up to criticism and opened yourself up to a comparative kind of display of, oh, look, I'm weak and I've got this and I've got this issue and I can't deal with it, and there's thousands of people out there that are dealing with it, and fake it till you make it seems to be hard at first, but it's actually probably the better solution. To fake, like, that was one thing I tried to deal with a lot when, I mean, I've spoke about it, we did a podcast recently, me and Musa. All right, I spoke about my job as a police officer before. One of the hardest things was facing the anxiety of work, that I faced there, dealing with violence and suicides and God knows how much and not knowing what's around the corner. And I remember coming up with an approach that just to push through, I thought I have to fake it until I make it. Like I have to fake confidence until I'm confident dealing with chaos. And yeah, I would drink like a couple of Red Bulls and just psych myself up and just like almost pretend that I knew what I was doing. And I realized that's what everybody else is doing out there. Like when you start, you think, oh, everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows the law. Everybody knows what they've got, what they're capable of, deploying. Everybody knows what tactics to use when you're facing with, someone with a knife or someone on the edge of a cliff or whatever it is, and then quickly, and because you're only focusing on your own inability, you're not really thinking about how everyone else is doing it, right?
Mm.
And then it kind of dawned upon me one day, oh, this person's only been here this long. Because when you're new, you don't know how long people have been there. Oh, this
Mm.
person's only been here this long. How have they picked it up? Oh, this person's only been here. And I realized you just have to fake it till you make it. You have to literally launch yourself in situations head first and kind of figure it out as you go along.
Mm.
Um, and it
And you
is
make
highly
it by
stressful.
doing,
And
isn't it? Just through experience.
yeah, the hard thing is that these are life and death situations, a lot of them, and you're
Mm.
changing people's lives completely. And you
Mm. It's
don't
a
want
lot of
to
pressure.
fake. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure because it's not just like, oh, you're going to get told off by your boss. You could ruin somebody's life for making a wrong decision, you know. Um, but I think not only that, you have to be, don't be scared of making mistakes and don't be scared of asking questions because at least you've covered yourself. And that's another thing, like that relates to what we're saying now. Like you could ask questions to your peers. So I could ask you a question, and I always do, about business or whatever it is. What do you think about this? Or a lot of people ask lately about hijrah, right? Oh, what country is good? Men talk and sit with each other. I've got a friend of mine, Emir. Every time I sit with him, like every time we see each other, we'll walk away from that thing with like a million ideas for business that I might do and he might do. It could be a little thing. It could be like, oh, a marketing strategy I hadn't thought about, or oh my god, I should do a little. That's actually one of the mid-journey tutorial things was sort of his inspiration. It's like, why don't you just do a little? I was like, oh, sweet, yeah, I didn't think of that. And then likewise, I'll offer him something. That kind of shoulder that you'll do with your friends, that will really assist you in the long run of just being able to think outside of your own head. Can you do that with women? Maybe, but not to the level where it's not going to impact your relationship in a particular way. What do you think about the therapy thing?
I think it's the best advertisement for the front row ever. because
Yeah,
because that's what we need, right? It's like we need an environment where we can open up in the first place, but then the kind of stuff that are good, obviously someone who's a bit on the ball, the kind of stuff that another man will give you would help you. Sometimes you're just wallowing in your emotions and you need to get out of it. And you need to be
yeah,
told, no, get into action mode. What's your next step? Okay, do this. What are you going to do after that? Okay, when will you do it by? Okay, next week. Okay, I'm going to check in on you next week. You're going to do it, right? That's what you need. Action overcomes a lot of problems, to be honest. I remember Dr. Shadi, he was saying about, when Musa went to the mountain and Allah spoke to him, and Allah said about the snake, his stick, Allah said, "Khudha wa la takhaf." Yeah,
yeah,
and Dr. Shadi said that means, or that's symbolic of the fact that when you're scared, if you take action, then the fear will go away. So action comes before getting rid of the fear. You don't wait till the fear's gone and then take action. No, in taking action, the fear will go away. So same goes with this. In taking action, the overwhelm can go away, the whatever, depression can go away, the intimidation can go away by taking certain action or getting clarity on something. And this is one of the big reasons why I really believe in mentorship and coaching and these things. And I've, when I've coached people, it's not purely about business or, I don't know, making sure you go to the gym every week. It's also these kind of personal issues that come up, dynamics between relationship stuff, and you need people to help, and I don't think you need a huge amount of training or experience to be able to help people with this. But the point is, yeah, I don't think it's always a therapy solution, or often it's probably not a therapy solution that's needed. A therapy solution is, I feel, it's something where it's more clearly a medical condition. Like, someone was telling me last night, they were describing someone, they got a panic attack. Start breathing heavily and all that, like, almost, it seems randomly. Obviously, it's probably got a trigger behind it. And then they went to the doctor, and the doctor said, yeah, that's anxiety. That's like panic attack anxiety, etc. And then, so that this person was telling me about that happened to someone. And I said, yeah, they need therapy because they've obviously had what do they call it? A traumatic event or whatever. And then the way of overcoming that is through like CBT, for example, cognitive behavioral therapy. But if you're just down, if you're just overwhelmed, if you're just broke, like you don't need therapy per se, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's hard to say. There are no doubt medical experts when it comes to this stuff, psychological experts, but there's also this per, per, pervasive thought that maybe they are quick to diagnose with these things. You know, oh yeah, you got ADHD, or oh yeah, you got depression, like I've listened to a lot of, not that I'm an expert, obviously I'm not saying I am, but you listen to a lot of podcasts about this kind of topic, and you realize that there are these hyper sort of diagnoses where like everybody walking through the door is getting diagnosed with the same thing, you know.
It's not
And
about that.
okay, if they
It's
do
like,
it,
yeah,
they do it at the moment with like Jordan Peterson was talking about it when it came to like the trans thing. All right, everybody's coming in with gender dysphoria. He called it a God. What was the term he coined? I don't know if he coined the term, but it was like a moral. Oh, I forgot what it was called. Like a demographic, almost like a moral panic, but something similar to that. I can't remember the word that he used. But essentially, it was like it was like the thing to do is to diagnose this now. Like if you look at the statistics in the past, it goes up like this, and then it goes down. For other things that were like that, there was other diagnoses in the past that like suddenly in this random point in time there was loads of this particular diagnosis, and then it kind of disappeared because everybody thought they had that. You know, everybody thinks they've got a trans kid now. Everybody thinks that their kid is gay. Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, and doctors feed into that, but like, yeah, I know what you mean. There are going to be things like, okay, really traumatic incidents, for example, no doubt. You know, people have been like through torture, for example. People have had really traumatic experiences when they're younger. People that were raped, people that were, you know, abused, people that, no doubt, there's going to be so much that's messed up in their mind that they're going to need to process, no doubt about it. And then generally, how far does that extend, and what do you coin as therapy, and what do you coin as not? Um, I think therapy itself is a loaded word. You know, counseling and
yeah.
therapy and this and that. It already puts
I
you in a
mean, I was
position of
specifically talking about like CBT, and I think CBT honestly is not too far from what I would consider like a method of coaching. Like it's not too different. And there's no harm in it. It's not drugs. So even if you're diagnosed with depression, it almost shouldn't make any difference
yeah.
to you. The point is, okay, diagnosed, not diagnosed, go and do something that will help. Maybe yeah, the drugs don't seem to help, right? According to that amazing book.
Drugs don't help. Is that the book?
It's
That'd be a
called
that'd be a good book.
something connections, lost connections, I think. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
So according to that book, I mean, he used like a proper meta analysis of a lot of studies on these different SSRIs, and apparently they don't work. What works
Right.
is changing your lifestyle. And CBT, it helps you to think about the same things you're already thinking about, just in a different way, which just makes you more positive and more of an action taker about it, right? So there's no harm in
Mm-hmm.
CBT. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not sitting there just venting your emotions or talking about the past. It's better than that, Yanni. And I think this is the standard now for therapy, is that they do CBT. So
Yeah.
even if you're not depressed, but the doctor thinks you're depressed and you've been diagnosed wrongly, doing CBT won't harm you, Yanni.
No, no, no. Yeah. I suppose there's levels to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um.
But this is the
I.
thing, going back to
I.
like the front row and stuff, is that the what was the conclusion of that book, Lost Connections, is that the reason people are depressed is because they have lost connections. They've lost connection with family, with close friends, with having people they feel they can rely on, having a support network. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's what's missing. That's what's causing a lot of this thing. Uh, I mean, we started talking about it from the women's perspective, that, oh, they think that men have a problem that they don't open up. So there are kind of two different problems. One is women want men to open up. That's one problem. We haven't really been discussing that. I think that should be just put to the side and tell women, like, give up on that, because
Do,
men aren't into that,
do you know?
right? But the
Yeah,
other
but I
side
also
is
think like
that
when.
men do have issues about opening up and
Yeah.
where to go to and all that.
I think they're saying that because they feel like that's the thing to say. That's what it is. It's like scoring
There's always
points. You know,
part of
it's
that.
like Yeah, it's like the reverse of cancel culture. Like people cancel things because they think that's what they should do. They should cancel this person,
Yeah.
and
You're saying
and it's
basically
like,
it's
oh
become
yeah, we should.
a bit of a cultural trend that people jump on.
It's like, oh yeah, score points by saying yeah, men should open up more
Mm.
because men are this and men are that, and it's kind of like a
Yeah.
pick me kind of
But it
scenario,
comes from a real
right?
place. It comes from a real place, which is I I define getting closer to my husband by him opening up to me. And I'm saying
The
you
thing,
have to just kind of change that thinking with men.
yeah, it depends though. Like, okay, you could have a woman dissatisfied in her marriage because her husband isn't talking to her, but what does that mean? Like, there are some men that just don't talk about anything to their women, and that's where a woman's going to say, "Oh, I want him to
Well,
talk
that's
to
a
me
bit
more. I want him to
extreme,
open
isn't
up
it?
to me."
Yeah, that's a bit
That is,
extreme.
but
Well,
then
I'll
there's
talk
also like,
about how, you know, how the dinner tastes.
uh, psychological epidemic. That was it. That's what the term
Epidemic.
was.
Okay.
Psychological epidemic. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I did a thingy once. I
there
did.
are extreme examples where men just like don't talk to their wives, but I think that's very rare, especially in Western culture, Yanni.
We had a thing at work called an employee assistance program. Yeah,
Okay.
and everyone at work was like nagging you to go on it. Like, just do it. Yeah, you know, oh, you're struggling with that, just do it. You're struggling with this. I remember I had a point once where like froze at work, and I just couldn't deal with something really basic. Um, but if you step back and look at the environment, like my dad had just got diagnosed with cancer, and all this stuff was running through my mind, and I was dealing with all sorts of things at work, and like I just remember just freezing and thinking I had to tell someone like I think it's very unsafe for me to work today because I can't. I'm not thinking straight. Like I can't function. They're like, oh, you need to call the employee assistance program. Right, right, right. So I called them up because I kind of felt like I had to prove that I needed time off.
Right,
Do
yeah.
you understand what I mean? Like they're all telling you to do it. And they're like, have you done it? I was like, well, it's like, well, you can't claim that you need help, but then not take help, whatever it is, you
Yeah,
know.
fair enough.
But anyway, I did it, and there's like some guy who answers the phone, and he's like, "What's going on?" And it was years ago now, so I'm trying to remember. I just explained what was happening, and then it's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to book you in for a session." Blah blah blah. So they book you into like a counselor or a therapist or whatever, and you get like 5 sessions or something like that, 5 or 6 sessions. Um, and they find someone. They usually find someone as close to where you live. So they literally found some like older woman like in the like down the road from me, like literally lived down there. Her house is her kind of therapy, whatever. I remember going in there, and I was like, what do I do here?" And I literally just explained like this all the stuff that's going on, and they're like, "Oh." They were like, "Yeah, sweet, we'll book you in for the next one." Like the first session was literally me just describing the situation, and then I never went back for any other sessions because I just thought, yeah, I don't need this. That's it. That's all I need to do. I just need to just let out whatever it was with no consequence. You know, no one's going to say to me, um, you know, no, basically no judgment kind of thing. If I told my family, then they might say, "Oh, this and that," or they'll feel responsible. That's another thing. Families can feel responsible, or like if you tell your mother something or your wife something, they might be like, "Oh,
Mm,
am
they
I a
take it
burden to
upon
you?" Another
themselves
day,
to. Mm.
yeah, another day it might turn around and be like, "Oh, I'm a burden to you, so I'm not going to ask you for anything or whatever because you've got a lot going on." No,
Mm.
that's not the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Men thrive on that responsibility, and they want that responsibility to look after you. For you to turn around and think the solution to this is for me to not ask for anything anymore because he's got too much going on, that's the reverse of what we want. Because I feel
True.
more fulfilled being able to assist and provide.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's also a conundrum that men can face, right? But yeah, never. I just didn't answer the calls, bro. I kept getting calls to do new meetings. I just never picked up. Couldn't deal with it anymore. Um,
I'm trying to
but look,
remember.
you know, I'm learning about this.
You know that time I mentioned. I said 2014. I was feeling really down. Um, I'm trying to remember if I ever felt the urge of wanting to like talk to someone about it, or maybe I just never even wanted to. It wasn't an urge that I felt. You know, it's possible.
Talk about it now. What was it, bro?
No, it's kind of like what you're talking about in terms of, I was doing um, I was doing PGCE teacher training. It's very intense. Pretty much every day going in to teach these kids as someone feeling unqualified, I just got
Yep.
anxiety. Like I just had constant anxiety, non-stop. So I guess I just got overwhelmed by that, and it just built up and built up. But there was no chance I was going to quit the degree. I was just going to keep going, just trying to keep getting better at teaching and stuff. But every single morning going in, my chest was tight. You know,
Mm.
um, and it just yeah. It obviously it started affecting beyond just when I'm teaching or when I'm in school. Then it extends beyond that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
You
like I
weren't
said, I just
married then, were you? Obviously.
no, I wasn't.
No.
I don't think I felt like talking to someone would help. I think I just did what I always do and what I know to do, which is like try and use these, hijack my brain to help myself out. So, for example, if I know that this is really tough, I'm not going to teach after this. I hate it, right? But I'm also not going to quit. Then how can I make myself feel better about this ending soon? So one thing I did, I put on the wall, I had like 12 weeks left of teaching, and I put on the wall 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 12. And every week I would just cross one off. That helped so much. That I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, if
yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah.
a visual thing where I can see it counting down, I'm like, time goes really fast, doesn't it? Yes, it does go fast, especially when you're busy and you're teaching and you're planning lessons. Yeah, it goes really fast. So if I have a visual thing of how quick the time is going, I'm going to feel better. So I did that, and I did a few things, dhikr and different things. So I kind of made up my own remedy. But like I said, I only have that thinking of I only have that self-awareness and recognizing thought patterns and stuff like that because I'm into this stuff. So what about someone who's
Mm.
not into this stuff? They might not know how to deal with it.
I wonder what you would have been like if you had a wife and kids back then. Because my biggest thing
That
is
would not
like,
be good.
yeah, yeah, you get stuck in your head, and then that affects how you are with your kids and your wife,
That
at
is
home.
true as
And
well.
then your wife will be like, "Oh, what's wrong? Talk to me. What's going on?" But you don't want to talk. But at the same time, it's still affecting how enthusiastic you are about just daily activities with your family, right?
I
I think
remember
that's the biggest barrier.
there are a few days, maybe it was one day or maybe 2, 3 days. I was just crying a lot. I was just crying. But it
Mm.
wasn't I was crying and I was thinking, why am I crying? Right? And I was thinking, it's just crying. I mean, it depends on the situation, but I feel like there are only certain times where you cry. One of them is general overwhelm. So when you're generally overwhelmed, you let it out by crying. So it's not a crying of sadness or
Mhm.
happiness, or it's just a release, maybe. I'm not sure. So I remember I was crying and I was thinking, this is interesting. I was like psychoanalyzing myself while I'm crying. But yeah. Oh, pressed a
Oh,
shortcut.
where have I gone? Nice. Show your colleagues.
There. Yeah.
Wow, this is a therapy session, bro. You're opening up to me.
I am a
That's what this
little
is.
bit. But that was a long time ago, but
It's
yeah.
it's taken this many episodes, but we finally cut through the outer shell.
Well, we have a reason to now.
Uh, yeah, it's
There's
tough,
only
isn't it,
two
man?
times I remember feeling like that kind of thing. I think so anyway. There was that time, and then there was before that, about 2012, when I was doing my master's degree, and I had 3 months to do my dissertation, and I had done none of it, and there was maybe 2 weeks left. And that whole 3 months, it wasn't normal procrastination. It was, I mean, the last semester of the degree. Remember, yeah, the degree is master's degree in for that subject. I think it's the best uni in the world, but generally, it's like a top 20 uni in the world. Everyone around you is like
Right.
super competent, and I was not
Yeah, yeah,
competent
yeah.
compared to them. Um, and so I was basically just completely. I remember that term. I think there were only 2 terms. I think there are only 2 terms in the master's degree. The second term, I did nothing except pray, sleep, eat, and work, like study, work, whatever. So I was just feeling awful, depressed. Like, what's life, Yani? Um, I always had that thing. I'm not quitting. There's no quitting. No such thing as quitting.
Yeah.
And I can do this, although I might struggle to do it, but I will do it. But basically, it was a few months of just like stress and just constant deadlines and doing stuff and nothing outside of those basic survival things. Then I get a release, which is the semester's over, but then I've got the dissertation, and I guess I was just kind of feeling awful about it and being intimidated by it and the typical procrastination things as well. But I kept saying to myself, I will do it. I will do it. Oh, there's only 1 month left. I'm going to do it. Oh, there's only 3 weeks left. Oh, and I've done nothing. Yeah. I'm like, no, but I'm definitely going to do it. And that really helped me. That was something that really helped me. And
Were you on your own then, like
at
family
that
and
time,
stuff?
because I finished the term, so there was no lectures or anything, I was living with my parents.
All right.
So I left London because I was in London during the thing. Um, and I remember like the most frustrating thing, like it was Ramadan, and some days I was not going to Taraweeh because I was like, no, I need to do the dissertation. But then of course I wouldn't do the dissertation either. And then that kind of thing, like, oh, I can't enjoy myself. I can't go out with my family. I can't do anything because I've got the dissertation, but then I don't do the dissertation either, you know? And that just builds up frustration and everything. Um, and that's I think at the beginning of my book I write about this like loser period in my life, I consider it. And I remember those, especially those like 2 3 months living with my parents. I remember I was sleeping on the floor because we didn't have enough beds in the house. I was just sleeping on the floor and I was just like feeling like a very, very much like a loser. And I was feeling like um, I I was only 20 or 21, but I felt like I should have done so much more, you know? Like, why am I? It's not that. So you have an excuse for not having a job because you're doing a master's degree. But then for me, I was nearly finished the master's degree and there was no clear path of how I'm going to turn this into a career or even a
Yeah.
wanting to turn it into a career because I was really, you could say, scared. I don't know what the word is. I really didn't want to get a 9 to 5 office job, you know, especially in the UK. I was like, I didn't want that, but I'm doing a degree that's going to lead to that naturally. So
Right.
there was
Yeah.
no money on the horizon. I wanted to get married, but then of course there's no prospects because of no money, no thing and that. And I'm like in this loser mode anyway. No exercise. So yeah, that was my kind of loser period. Yeah. There was that time and then there was when I was doing the PGC. So yeah, alhamdulillah.
Lessons learned, though, I suppose. Look where I was going to say, look where we are, but look where you're at now. Um, and that's probably a lesson for a lot of people that are listening. A lot of younger brothers that are listening, no doubt, because what you've said isn't necessarily something that I think is exclusive to you. I think so many guys go through that.
Oh
So
yeah,
many people at
definitely.
uni.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Um, because because up until that point, really, you've been funneled into that position.
Yeah.
And it might not be always your choice, but like the system funnels you into that position. Your parents might funnel you into that position because they think that that's what's the system. That's the best way to beat the system is by following the system's rules. And you just and you get a bit more autonomy, I think, at university, and that's when you start thinking, what, like especially you're the final frontier, because after this, you know, am I going to go more into another system of whatever this
Yeah.
job was,
It's
if this
like
job is?
you're funneled through a system without too much autonomy, right? And then as soon as you hit, let's say 18, 20, 21, whatever it is, you want to become independent, you want to get married, you want to do all these things that require actual autonomy, but you haven't had autonomy that whole time. And so you
Mm.
have ambitions that are so misaligned with your competence and confidence at that moment in your life.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I feel like if instead of, although I can't deny like uni, like especially bachelor's, that was a smooth ride, Yanni, for me. But I'm just thinking if I spent those 3 years like doing jobs, then like different jobs, working, different things. By the time I was that age, 21 or whatever, I think I would be way more confident and I just wouldn't feel so behind or so bad about myself, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I've probably met loads of different people at that time as well, you know, and that always shifts people's perspectives and what's possible and what's out there. Um, just
Yeah,
general
that's
networking.
true.
But yeah, that autonomy that comes through. I mean, it's that autonomy that probably led me to, Allah first and foremost, but gave me the opportunity to learn more about Islam and practice my religion more because you weren't just following the set whatever.
Mm,
And also, all those the cliques and the groups and stuff at school that are very well defined. You can always find the popular kids or the whatever rock and roll boys or whatever it was, whatever groups there are. Don't know what groups there are these days. But then when that kind of dismantles itself through, I don't know, even as simple as like removal of school uniforms, when school uniforms disappear and then suddenly there's a bit more individualism, but then when you have university, you're free to go and come whenever you please, more or less. And you're meeting people way more outside of those kind of groups and
yeah.
structures that were in school. And you're meeting, like at university, I was coming to London all the time because I had the opportunity to. I met a lot of people online, I met a lot of people on Twitter and stuff. Suddenly, the world kind of became my oyster. And I realized, oh, this person's. Like, you'd meet people older than you as well. That was another thing. Meet a lot more
Yes.
people that were older
Yeah.
than you, a lot more people that had achieved different things. You're like, oh, so this isn't like I was like first year uni degree and realizing that I didn't actually want to do any of this, but likewise, I needed to push through, follow through. Maybe it took me a lot longer to get a bit
Yeah.
more of that autonomy, but
Yeah.
absolutely.
In my master's degree, I was the youngest person by far, by maybe
Mm,
4 years. So a lot of the people
yeah.
there, they already had jobs and they were just trying to polish things up, get a promotion, whatever, by doing the degree. And I was like baby, you know. So obviously they would feel more confident in themselves, etc. But you know, like you said, like um, I had that loser period, and now Alhamdulillah things are all right. Um, but the thing that pushed me through it a lot of the time was just husn al billah. Because I remember around that time I learned that hadith, you know, I am as my slave expects me to be. And I had attended a few seminars, Aqidah, this and that. And so that little knowledge of Allah and how to think about Allah and what to expect from Allah, that definitely helped me. And then also, I was always doing reading around psychology, behavior
Mm,
change, personal development. Those things helped me because I've probably said this before. I feel like my default path, if you like, was to be a loser. Okay. I really think that because my mindset,
okay.
even today, my mindset is not the best mindset. You know, I have a lot of negative thinking, doubts. I have a bit of a tendency, I think it's in genetics, towards anxiety. So I have a lot of these things, but that's why I'm so into personal development because it helped me genuinely, like in those ways.
Mm, no doubt. That's the test sometimes as well. Like when you're in the deepest trenches of your own mind, trying to produce something for yourself out of yourself.
Yeah.
It's what you do in those difficulties that Allah is looking for.
Yeah.
um, because there's many different outlets to deal with your difficulties. There's many different. You could mask it up. You could commit sin. You could be productive, and you could force yourself into something beneficial, even if you're not achieving the thing that you set out to achieve. At least doing some khair or a good deed here, or listening to some Quran or whatever it is going to be so much better than the alternative. Even though you think, or part of you, or the Westward of Shaitan, is that the alternative of masking it. And I don't know, with I'll give you an example. Yeah, I stopped listening to music, when I started practicing years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, but before that, I needed music to do everything, like everything. You know, from when I woke up, and I know everybody says that. Everybody says that. Oh, music was my life. Blah blah blah. I don't know. Literally, I'd go to sleep with the headphones on. I would wake up with headphones on. I would, you know, all
Do you
the
think
time,
that's a
all
music
the
thing or
time.
a stimulation thing?
Stimulation. because you couldn't do anything without a soundtrack in your life.
Mm.
And because of that, like I started training in the gym through music, and everybody uses music in the gym, and it's like you can't watch a fitness video online without that kind of soundtrack, right? And then uh, when I stopped listening because of the zeal of Islam, for that whole year, the first year of me practicing, like I was bulletproof. Do you know what I mean? Like nothing. I even stopped playing video games, and I didn't even realize I make an active decision to stop playing video games. It just happened because I found something so incredible and magnificent in Islam that all my energy went into that. Like my procrastination, if I was procrastinating for work, procrastinating my homework or coursework or dissertation, or whatever, it was because I was watching lectures or. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
But then obviously shaitan catches up to you later on, and like even up until today, bro. Not that I've listened to music, but the Westworcer still comes like in my head. It's like, oh, do you know what? I bet you if I started listening to music again, I'd really be consistent in the gym and I'd have that mindset. Do you understand? Like that Westworcer, I'm not actively thinking now. That's what comes into my head. Do you understand? Because you think back to when was I achieving these things, or when was I
Mm.
consistent in the gym? Oh, it was when I was soundtracking my life with this nonsense. And then you have to stop yourself and realize, number one, that voice in my head isn't my voice. That's something we forget to do. We forget to say that that voice isn't my voice. That's sounds like me, but that's not me talking.
Mm.
That's clearly the West of Shaitan. That's his trick. He makes you think it's you thinking these things. It's not you. Um, Number two, you realize this is the test right now. That very moment when that thought comes to my head, that's the test right now. What am I going
Yeah.
to do with that thought? Am I going to act upon it,
Stick or twist.
or am I
Yeah.
going to? Yeah. Even though, and that was another thing. Like even though you might not see the immediate solution in front of you by picking the option of the pleasure of Allah. Yeah, sometimes the response will be immediate, but sometimes you doing that good deed or you picking Allah's path doesn't necessarily always reward you immediately, but it's that delayed gratification because later on, when your iman is higher or whatever, you don't feel so crap about yourself. You don't feel like, oh, I was a loser then and I'm even more of a loser now because I picked the wrong, because I know that I shouldn't have done that. Do you understand
Mm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And actually, it's more empowering, and it's like that positive talk. People talk about it like, oh, we should be more positive when we talk to ourselves. We shouldn't be so critical. You could face a mirror and say, you're an idiot. Why did you do that? But actually, imagine the positive talk of, ah, that was smart. Like talking to your
Mm.
past self, like that
Yeah.
was smart. You picked the right decision there. You did that good deed, or it could be something as simple as like praying that sunnah before Fajr, even though you're knackered. In the moment, you might not necessarily feel the benefit. You do it, and you might just go back to bed after. But then you wake up later on during your day, you're like, oh, I feel good. Like my iman is sky high because I know that I've just stacked those good deeds. Reading the
Yeah.
Quran, I know I feel better. Understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And this is
So that's
one of
just.
the biggest builders of, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, confidence or whatever, is this is a key foundation that if you don't have it, you might always just keep struggling. It is when you feel you can rely on yourself to do what you say you're going to do, then everything changes. And a lot of people,
Mm,
especially guys, I think young men, they don't trust themselves to do what they say they're going to do, and then everything crumbles after that. And if they could just
mm,
start with little things and be like, I put my mind to doing X and I've been doing that regularly, I can trust myself a bit more. And then next step and next
mm.
step and next step, that is a big deal.
It's realizing it's so subtle, isn't it? The way Shaitan works that you forget you're in an active battle against a separate entity. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest sort of pitfalls is that we hear this voice in our head telling us to be lazy or to not do this or not do that or mask it or sin or whatever it is. And you think that's you talking. You're like, well, I know myself best, so maybe that's what will work for me. Despite what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, or despite what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, actually, you forget completely that that is an active battleground in your mind. That isn't you talking.
Yeah.
You are very, you are just, you are you, and there is this voice in your head that sounds like you, that's telling you to do things. If you
Yeah.
can remember that that's an active battle you're fighting, and the enemy has snuck his way in, undercover, so to speak, yeah, that changes your perspective because you're like, whoa, wait a sec, that's not me. That's not me. That's not who I should be. And I think that's what we've got to remind ourselves. And we're reminded about that all the time. Every salat we're reminded about that if we pay attention. You know, if we pay attention to the surahs that we're reciting, we'll be reminded of of
Yeah.
that all the time.
Interesting.
But
Allah doesn't just say shaitan is your enemy. Allah says shaitan is your enemy, so take him as an enemy. What does that mean?
mm,
Why did Allah need to
mm.
add that second thing of take him as an enemy? Because it requires an action from us or an awareness, like you're saying.
Yeah, I think we forget though, don't we? I mean, I know I do. I forget that that's an active entity within me trying to
Yeah,
lead me
definitely.
astray, as opposed to my own thoughts. And yes, we have a nefs, no doubt. We have a nefs that we're fighting against. But if you can actively say to yourself, "That wasn't me just now," that random thought that's just come into my head. Where's that come from? Me trying to find solutions. That's not me being productive and finding solutions. That's me. That's not even me. Shaitan's trying to mess with me right now.
It can't be from
You
me
know?
because it's going to lead to Jahannam, and me don't want Jahannam. Shaitan wants me to go Jahannam, so it must be here.
It must be him. Yeah, but it's in your own voice almost. That voice in your head that you hear every day.
Yeah, it doesn't
Um,
sound like Gollum.
yeah, if it was a bit more distinct and sinister, you'd think, "Oh, yeah, I'm not listening to that." But subhanallah.
Bro, do
Wow.
you think,
Go on.
what a
What do I
great
think about what?
podcast episode. What do you think, we were just talking about a lot of, like, I guess, women go through it as well, although I don't feel it's even their battle. They don't need to go through it, but because the way the world is, they go through it. What we just talked about, that whole loser phase and all that, and I know for a fact,
Yeah.
like, a lot of men go through that. I feel like age, I don't know, it could start at 15, it could start at 18. Let's say 18 to 28. That's the hardest time of a man's life. Generally, obviously, it's an average, yeah? And a
Yeah.
woman's hardest time of her life is not that time. A woman's hardest time is a bit later, like the period where she's got very young kids. That's the hardest time for her.
Mm, yeah.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense
I
to
can
you?
see that. Yeah, I can see that. Depends. Obviously, it's going to vary from person to person,
Yeah,
but yeah, definitely. Like
on
I'll
average,
definitely say
and
that the hardest time of my wife's life is right now.
yeah, exactly.
Three young
3 young
boys,
kids, yeah.
6 and under. Yeah, it's tough. It's
Yeah,
tough.
but that helps. Like, that gives perspective, right? It's like I went through my hardest time before I met you. You're going through it now, but inshallah it'll be easier later.
Maybe,
I'm not sure
maybe.
how easy it
Allah
gets,
knows
to be
best.
honest, when the kids are older. But yeah, I mean, at least on the level of having some free time, like when the kids, for example, they're all at school. Because my memory of my mum was we were at school, so she did actually have that free time when we were all at school every day.
Yeah,
So that is a big relief compared to when you have young kids, right? Assuming your kids are going to be at school.
yeah. Kids are unpredictable, bro. That's the thing. That's another thing. Like, you've got to put yourself aside, and the mother's going to do that a lot. Like, subhanAllah, Ilyas, so our 3-year-old, other day, going to take him swimming. He just trips over and just face plants the pavement. Like,
Ooh,
just we're literally about to go into the swimming pool, like the leisure center, wherever. Just boom, and he gets up, bro, and I there was so much blood, I didn't know what injury he had. I thought he's knocked his teeth out. Like, there was just blood on
yeah, yeah.
blood, and I just thought, right, we're going to A&E. So we go. We literally just go. Like, all the plans are cancelled, and he just got to drop everything. And obviously,
Yeah.
that's gonna get. Alhamdulillah, all he did was when it stopped bleeding, everything cleared up. He'd literally like punctured the inside of his lip,
Right.
and it's very
With
deep.
his
It is
tooth.
very deep,
Yeah.
and it was, yeah. But that was it. But when you were there in the moment, and I realized actively in that moment, right, my wife is kind of, I mean, I'm dealing with him, no doubt, trying to comfort him. That isn't something I would say, come on, dust yourself and get up. No, he was seriously hurt, right? Um, but my wife was like dealing with him, and immediately I was conscious of Suleiman, the older one, because he was obviously really excited to go swimming, but also he's like witnessing this horror of his brother like bleeding out. And I was just like trying to comfort Suleiman by saying, listen, we're going to look after ADS now. We're going to take him to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. Like, trying to get him a bit more responsible. Like, okay, help me get this, help me get that, to kind of distract him of it. So he doesn't feel like he's like a helpless bystander watching his brother, and he did get emotional, and he gets really like upset about hospitals and stuff because
Really? Yeah, I wouldn't
um,
expect that.
he does, because he associates it with, like, he associated with my dad when my dad went to hospital like non-stop. He
Mm.
associates it with it, Khalil, because Khalil spent what 2 or 3 weeks in hospital when
Mm.
just not too long after he was born. Uh, a lot of yeah, he's seen a lot of hospital stuff, and he just
But
associates it with whoever it is
just to
being
be
taken away.
blunt, though, do kids that age
Yeah,
even care that much about other people?
you'd be surprised. You'd
They
be
do, yeah.
surprised.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Suleiman, like recently we asked him, uh, like make dua for, I can't remember what it was, like make dua for anything you want. I can't remember what it was. Oh, Zemzem. He had some Zemzem water. That's why. It
Mm. Mm.
wasn't a birthday thing. I'm like, it wasn't a birthday thing. I can't remember because I don't do birthdays, but it almost felt like it was. But no, it was like we gave him some Zemzem water. We said, "Oh, make dua for anything you want." And like, this is a kid, bro, 6 year old kid. He could make dua for anything. And he was like, Ya Allah, please make my brother better. His little brother had like this big rash on his neck. Alhamdulillah, it cleared
Mm.
up now.
Mm.
And I was just like, wow, that's amazing, because that's who he's closest to, his brothers. Even though they might fight and whatever, he doesn't go to school, so he's homeschooled, and that's who he spends 90% of his time with is his brother. So um, there is a level of caring, and especially if I think he's got this thing about people being sick or ill or whatever. He gets really worried, um, because I'll never forget the morning of after my dad had passed away, and he came downstairs, and my dad wasn't there anymore, and he was used to my dad being in that corner of the room. That was like the setup that we had for him, instead of him going to a hospice or whatever. And he just disappeared. I hadn't slept that night at all. So like I was like half asleep when he woke up, and I could hear him screaming, asking for where my dad was. Obviously we have to explain to him, but kids do feel. I mean, do you remember being 6 years old? I certainly do. And you don't remember.
Don't. Maybe a few memories, not much.
Like 6 years old is when I moved to Tunisia, more or
Mm.
less. And so the bulk of my childhood, even though I only spent 2 years there, I felt like my whole childhood was there.
Mm.
So it's that kind of span, isn't it? Of from six onwards, you kind of start remembering things really, really vividly. Um, so I'm very aware of that. That's why I'm trying to cultivate some decent memories and some decent
Mm.
kind of principles now,
I
because
think I was
it's
in
kind of too
Saudi
late.
when I was 6.
Be wary. How old is your oldest now?
Nearly 4. 4 in a few months.
Maybe, maybe four.
No, I said he's nearly
It's like
4.
birthdays. Oh, nearly. I thought you said maybe. Like that. We were at the hospital the other day, and she goes, "How? What's his date of birth?" And like, I just didn't say anything, and my wife just didn't say anything, and we just like, and she goes, "What's his date of birth?" I was like, 31st January, and I remembered because we don't do birthdays, so it's easy to forget. It's
Did they
easy to
use that
forget.
question to make sure you're the parents or something?
Maybe some sort of security thing, but the amount of times like I have to really stop and think about it. Um, yeah, because
I've
it looked
forgotten my
funny,
own
like,
birthday a few
but
times.
yeah, that's it. You're an old man, bro. Like Berk. You're older than me, so I don't blame you.
No, I forgot it years ago as well.
Sometimes you forget how old you actually are. I'm going to be 30, inshallah, in a couple of months. The big 30.
Remember
Tell
that
me about
episode
it.
where you talked about what was it? You wanted to do skateboarding and then you gave up. Oh no, you didn't even want to do it because you're too old. What was it?
Yeah, pretty much. The thing is, yeah, that's another thing on the topic we were talking about, because you're like, oh, in your loser period or whatever. I think another thing that men can do sometimes is beat themselves up for like falling off the wagon, and like don't bother starting again. You know,
Hmm.
don't bother getting up and giving it another go. Like how many times have I stopped and started whatever diet it's been, or how many times have I stopped and started training, or how many times have I? And every time you say, "Oh, it's going to be different this time," I've actually learned to kind of embrace the stopping and starting. Um, I don't want to beat myself up by jumping on the bandwagon, like falling off the bandwagon and trying to jump back on again. I just try and embrace it. Like, oh yes, so yeah, it didn't work out last time. Let me try again. And I think with that more positive mentality, it also helps when like you have, um, if you're like low on iman and then you want to try and increase and improve again, you know. And like I will jump back on whatever trying a good deed it is, whether it's reading the Quran or whatever it is, giving more charity. And I'll say to myself, I actively want to continue this forever. But then when if I was to fall off for whatever reason, I don't want to say, oh, that's it, I've fallen off now. I'm going to give up forever. Even if I fall off a million times, I want to get up a million and one times.
Yeah.
And I don't want to guilt trip and beat myself up about that. And I think a lot of guys do. They just give up completely because they think,
Mm.
well, if I can't be consistent, then there's no point. And that's it. And they never bother, you know?
But how do you
I don't,
get consistent? It's by never giving up and like working on
well,
your approach.
it's a, it's the facade of watching others thinking that everybody's got it figured out when
Hmm.
everybody just bounces up and down all the time. And I think that's important to realize, to give yourself a reality check that everybody stops and starts everything. The only difference me and you have is that we probably talk about it openly more, but I wouldn't, I'd suspect that a lot of my friends and peers all stop and start things, you know. Some people are really consistent in certain things. Let's talk about the gym, for example. Some of my friends are like amazing physiques and personal trainers and all sorts. And then they'll look at you and they'll talk to you and be like, why can't you figure like sort it out, mate? But there's going to be other stuff that I know that I've probably been really consistent with since forever. But it doesn't
Mm.
mean that the stuff that you're up and down on, you give up completely. I just keep trying. And I think it's important to have that positive mentality when it comes to stuff like that because it will help you not just in your dunya but absolutely in your deen. Because yes, you're going to make mistakes. Yes, you're going to sin. Yes, you're going to forget this. You're going to do that. But just get yourself back up again. You know, the time is now. It's about what you die upon, really. It's not about you know how you start and all that. Oh,
100%.
someone's coming into the room. I wonder who it is.
Hope there's no blood
Probably one of
everywhere.
the children. Well, whoever it is has opened the door, but he hasn't walked in, so it's definitely one of the kids. Probably ran away. I can't hear, so I can't. I've got the headphones in. I don't know who it is. Oh well, maybe it's a Jin. Spooky.
Let's wrap it up, inshallah.
Inshallah. Oh, look, the door just shut itself now. Brilliant.
Good
Yeah,
episode,
all right
though. I
then.
think
Let's wrap
this
it up.
was 195, getting close to 200,
Let's count.
alhamdulillah. And yeah,
We're doing a big
inshallah,
live
from
event.
now on, you can expect it every single week on time. Inshallah.
Okay.
Oh,
Inshallah. I'm going camping next week.
oh yeah, cool. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
Assalamu alaikum.